Today is another Z day. In the last video, we left off with trying to test fit the KA with the transmission attached into the car. Unfortunately, we needed to pull the engine out because of some clearance issues and our hoist stopped working. We would just keep pumping and it wouldn't go up. Well, I think it got too cold outside because the hoist is not doing hoist things anymore. I don't know if it was too cold or if it was just too tired. Today, we're going to continue the swap because although it is in the engine bay, it is not mounted. Just move it around. Our issue right now is that the oil pan is currently sitting on the subframe. So we did notch the front of the subframe and it's still hitting. Also the rear, or I guess the middle of the oil pan, is sitting on the steering rack. Not looking too good. I honestly thought this swap would be a lot easier, putting a 4-cylinder in a car that originally has a V6. Plus people have done SR swaps, but I guess this is why the KA swap has not been done. So our very next step is going to be pulling out the engine yet again. I'm going to start taking some measurements of the oil pan itself because I want to see if I have space to cut this oil pan in a way that would allow more clearance. And then I also have some sheet metal that I'll be able to use to recreate the curves that we need. But before I pull it out, I am going to mark on the oil pan and take some pictures where it is contacting the subframe. And then once we figure all that out, we have to make custom motor mounts. We're going to have to bridge from the block to the car itself. Looks like the hoist was just tired after all. There she goes. This is where the rack and pinion sits on the 240. You can see the indent here on the oil pan that allows for that clearance. This is where it is sitting currently on the Z. I drew a little line here. We're gonna try and massage this out just a little bit. Going back in. All right, let's lower the engine and see where we sit now. Honestly, that already looks a lot lower. Yeah, it looks. Oh, dude, that's perfect. So right now the oil pan is below the subframe, which is good. That's what we want. That means we can lift up the engine ever so slightly and then weld the mounts in place. Because like I said before, the oil pan is supposed to be level with the subframe from the factory. Not that this came from the factory, but that's just how these pans in cars are designed. All right, just go up ever so slightly. There we go. So now we're free. Let's see how far away the mounts are now. This is gonna be really fun to make in here. Really should have taken the intake manifold out first. This won't be too bad though. It's just right here. Lastly, we'll check the clearances to the rack. Much better. I would stick my fingers in there, but I'm not going to. So we've determined the correct height of the KA. Now we need to make some measurements to make sure it's centered in the car. Although it may look centered, I like to verify 100% by using this method. So we'll move this out of the way. So the transmission has this ridge right on the bottom. That signifies the center of the trans. Luckily, we have a nice center point to measure from. So not only do we need to verify the distance between the midpoint and the frame rail are the same on both sides, but we also need to make sure it's clocked correctly. Because right now, when looking at it from the front, you can kind of tell that it is clocked ever so slightly towards the right. What we need to do is jack it in a way that it's turned to the left half an inch, maybe less than half an inch, and then measure the distance between the frame rail and the midpoint of the trans. We're gonna measure from that frame rail to this frame rail and then take the midpoint. Looks like we got about 35 inches. Nate, what's half of 35? Okay, so the midpoint has to be 17 and a half. What are we at now? Oh, we're close. Can you push the engine towards the driver's side ever so slightly? Oh wait, maybe the passenger side. Right there. Hold it for a second. That's where it needs to be. Now you just gotta sit there and hold it for the next hour while I make these motor mounts. So I have just prepped the metal on the engine mount and the piece that we cut off in the last video from the original engine mount. I've completely bolted and tightened these on to the block and the rubber mount for the Z. So now what I wanna do is grab some metal like this, nicely prepped, cut it to shape. I'm gonna put the first layer on the inside of this, we'll call it the bottom half, and we'll bridge it to the upper piece of the block side. Then I can unbolt it from the car and finish the welds from the inside. I'm gonna have to remeasure the transmission to make sure it's centered. 17 and a half, right? think we are good. Yeah, it's right on the money. All right, we finally have this side somewhat welded in. It's not completely welded because we can't get every angle with the engine still in the car. So this will at least do for now. Now we need to start welding the other side, but unfortunately, it's gonna be really hard to show, film, and explain because it's not really visible. So I went ahead and just tacked everything into position and took it off. This is what we came up with. Looks very not good right now. But that's because I could barely reach the welder in there. So I just try to tack it into position for now. And this is the exact shape and dimension that we need. Now I need to clean it up and make it actually structural. We actually ended up using an Integra tow hook. That is what this piece is right here. I wonder which Integra this came off of. Not ours, because it's straight. Usually the tow hooks on our cars are all... Oh, here's a perfect example. They look like this. Is that one bent too?
Slightly,
yeah. This isn't even an Integra and it's bent. Since a lot of you have asked about my welding settings on various things I've welded before, I'll tell you the process that I use to weld this. This is still a work in progress, it's not done yet. But I was not sure what I wanted to set it at. So I found the thickest piece of the metal on the structure that I'm welding together because I wanted to make sure it had good heat. Without good heat, you cannot have good penetration. So I started here and just welded a little spot weld, and it rose up really fast. So I knew for sure my wire speed was too fast. So I turned it down. And I also turned the heat up. So I maxed it out at 5. Then I welded again, and it was too small. So I turned my wire speed up a little bit. Then I welded another tack, and it looked nice. So I welded some beads on it, and I was happy with it. So that is how I came up with my results. We are going to add a couple more little pieces here. I'm going to add this arm to this side. This is 16 gauge metal. And then all these little gussets, I'm going to fill in these corners. And yes, I could have made this from scratch. It probably would have looked a lot nicer, but honestly, I'm not really too concerned about how my motor mounts look. It's not really that important. They just have to be structural and work. After some welding and grinding, this is what we came up with. Not too bad. This thing is honestly really beefy for what it is, and it'll definitely hold a KA in there, no problem. All right, let's drop it down, see how she sits. We will have to reinforce this eventually, but just for sitting in here, I think that's fine. She's in there. Let's check the clearances. Oil pan looks good. It's not hitting the rack either. I think we nailed it. I think we got it. Oh, that's so exciting. It's official. The KA is in the Z. Now for the moment of truth. Will it clear with the hood closed? Should I do it carefully or just slam it? Shoo! It fits. You'd never know there's a KA under this. Pretty free too. I don't feel it like pressing up on anything. Before I get too ahead of myself, I'm going to reinforce this mount. Before I take it off of the car, I'm going to use this tiny piece of metal to bridge the top. That way when I'm reinforcing it with the sticker metal here, it won't warp, making these 2 points uneven. All right, let's make this look pretty. Oh, it's all done. I had to put a little signature on there. That way I know that it's my car. Yeah, this thing is pretty beefy. A little more beefy than I was anticipating having it done. But you know what? It's definitely going to hold the engine into the car. She's in. The mounts are officially done. Never hurts to mess around a little bit with the welder. I did spray some paint in the crevices in here. I do plan on getting this powder coated eventually, but again, the goal right now is just to get this engine started to make sure it's worth putting more money into. Which brings us to our next step, figuring out the wiring conversion, because I will be making my own harness. We're back at Mayhem today, and we're gonna work on making the carport in the rear of the track, as well as some other miscellaneous details.
See, we're back in kindergarten class. No, this is called crafting with the boys.
Crafting with the boys. What? That looks so legit. Well, after just a few laps, we've already marked up this wall quite a bit. Looking at pictures from the exact perspective to get the right dimensions of this building. Here's the picture in question, and here is the result. Spot on. Dang, that was sick. That looks so good, actually.
Yeah, that's 30. That feels good, dude. Oh, yeah.
Dude.
Yeah.
Garages. Scale garages that go behind Mayhem.